Today we're going to build a mech which was inspired by and is similar to, but not the same as, a Space Marine's Dreadnought from the game Warhammer 40k, which was created by a company called Games Workshop. Praise be unto their name. A little morsel for you. I think in this episode is the second time I have ever used blue paint. I ain't sure. Maybe you can check me. To start with, I took 2 cylindrical beads from the crafting store and wrapped them in thin cardstock, or paper would work fine too. I attach it with super glue because it's not as bulky as hot glue. Then I looked through my collection and I found another bead that kind of has a techno gear kind of look to it, and this is what I'll use to connect the 2 legs together. So take a kebab skewer and hot glue it to one of the cylinder beads radially, like you see here. And then take another one of those beads, slide it along the skewer, and hot glue it to the first bead like you see here. Chop off the excess, leaving about a 1/16 of an inch. Now hot glue your other bead to a skewer, and chop off the excess, leaving about a 1/4 inch on each side. And now you can insert those into the legs. Attach with hot glue and try to tilt the legs like you see here while the glue hardens, and this will give the mech a more dynamic pose later on. Now from 1-inch thick extruded polystyrene, which we've used many times before, cut a 1-inch cube. Then cut that cube in half. Use a fresh blade and draw back and forth while cutting. Don't just push the knife down. Then cut a taper, beginning and ending about halfway along 2 edges. Here's what it should look like once done. These 2 pieces are the sides of the torso. Then cut a piece that is 1 inch by 1 inch by 3/4 of an inch. And cut 2 tapers along one side, with one of them being longer than the other, as you see here. This piece is the center of the torso. Now hot glue the 3 pieces together. Notice that the center is offset in both directions. It's about an 1/8 inch lower than the 2 sides, and it's about a 1/4 inch further forward than the 2 sides. Now hot glue a skewer into the bottom of the torso, cut off the excess, and then hot glue the legs to that post like you see here. Notice that I also put some dabs of hot glue on the tops of the legs as well, where the hips are. This gives me 3 points of contact with the torso, just for maximum strength. From thin cardstock like a cereal box, cut 1/4 inch wide strips. From those strips, chop 2 pieces that are 3/4 of an inch long. Glue them together in a cross. Then chop 2 more pieces that are a little shorter and hot glue them onto the cross like you see here. Basically, you're just stacking them up. This makes 1 foot. Repeat the whole process to make a 2nd foot. And then hot glue the feet to the mech. Make sure you hold the mech standing up straight while the glue is cooling. Now we carve the, I guess you would say, arms, but we're carving the main chunks for the weapons. These will attach to the torso. Cut 2 pieces that are 1 inch by 1 inch by 3/8 of an inch thick. Taper them the long way, like you see here, from the midpoint of a short edge to the midpoint of a long edge. Then lay the piece down and rotate it, and cut another taper. Here's what they look like after both tapers have been cut. Now I took a drinking straw and injected it with hot glue. Set it aside for a few minutes to cool, and then you can use scissors to cut it. I'm going to use scissors to cut 2 pieces that are about 1 inch long, with one end being cut at a 45-degree angle. This could be a bolter or some kind of cannon. Hot glue these to one of the arms just as you see here. In the other arm, I just inserted 6 short pieces of toothpicks, and then coated them with white glue to seal them in place. These are like missiles or rockets or something like that. And one more piece of foam for the body, 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch by 3/8 of an inch. This gets attached to the back of the torso's center, but it's offset upward so that about 1/4 of an inch protrudes out. Then I took some chipboard and cut small circles and hot glued these to the sides of the torso. These will be the mounting points. But wait, you scream at your computer screen as you watch this. Why don't you use magnets here? Then you could make all kinds of different weapons for the mech and change out its loadout later on and swivel their position. And yes, you certainly could do that. You should do that. I did not do that here. Okay, so then I chopped 2 short pieces of solid drinking straw and hot glued them to that final structural piece. These are just the exhaust ports. Now raid your spare bits and find something that would serve well as an emblem or a clan symbol or something like that. This was some old costume jewelry, I think, and I just hot glued it to the left torso. And notice I also glued some chipboard panels onto the torso as well. I also found a gear bead which I super glued to the back. Now black bomb everything. Then choose your dominant color for the mech. I used blue here. And apply a solid base coat to, you guessed it, all of the surfaces that you want to be blue. I needed to do 2 coats with this cheap acrylic paint. Then I went around with my metallics and hit all the bits that would be metallic. I had some silver stuff, the cannons were copper, and I applied some gold on the front. Then I took a lighter blue, this is Blue Harbor, and I edge highlighted all the blue edges. This is similar to dry brushing in that you don't want too much paint on the brush. Just work your way along, nicking at all those edges. And then I had a camera malfunction, but the last thing you want to do is apply a black wash to the entire piece. Mix black acrylic paint and water, with most of it being water, and apply it to the entire mech. It will dry much lighter than it looks when wet. To help show you what the right amount looks like, here's some footage from a future episode in which I happened to use the exact same painting scheme. See how I just keep going back to the water jar and mixing it on my paper till I get the thinness that I like. And then here's what it looks like when I apply it to the model wet. And when you attach the weapons, be sure and attach them in an offset, kind of lower than the torso. And mount it on a 60mm base. I 3D printed mine, but you could cut it out of chipboard as well. And here it is in context, about to fight some Tyranids. Some white dots on all the panels there, just sort of rivets or something like that. And some cooling holes in the gun barrels. You can see that transfer on the arm. I made that just as described in episode 9, except it's only one-sided, and I attached it with glue stick. So I'm Wylock, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.